Oh, wait a minute. Too many. Good morning again. I love that bell on the tape, and I originally got that from Mary Hunt. She always rang a little bell, and I fell in love with it. And also, every time I hear a bell anywhere, the church bells around or anything, I use that as a little notification of get present, Dulcie, and a call to prayer, call to go within. And I want to just welcome everyone to the first verbal class of Serra, going through the New Year's into 2008. And the topic being a call to silence. And before I left, a few people had said to me, and I heard a couple people actually say the term, what in the world would you want to go and be quiet for? Yeah. And I thought, yeah, what in the world? What in the world is quiet enough? You know, what in the world would, and how many times have we heard people, and I've used that term, what in the world would you want to go do that for? You know. And I think those of us who have been called to the silence, have called to come up here, have discovered that nothing out there tastes as good as silence feels. Nothing out there, no people, no parties, no gifts, no Christmases, no family gatherings. No matter how much you love where you're with the people, there's always a part of me, no matter where I am, listening to whatever's going on in the dramas, and I do enjoy them, I applaud them, and I have a really good time with them, and I especially appreciate those who are more creative in their movies than others, and I'm a movie lover. You know, I love to go to the films, and but always there's a little part sitting back here observing, appreciating God appearing as whatever drama the person is creating, knowing that it is their mind, knowing it is coming from thought, knowing it is coming from conditioning and from the universal ideas of what we should or shouldn't be doing, and yet loving it, and yet, accepting, isn't that person having an interesting experience, you know? And I got to that by also accepting that in myself. And I remember years ago I used to hear in the back of my consciousness, and now for my next trick, you know, where is she off to now? What are you doing next? Oh, she's off here, off there. But always, since I tasted the silence, which for me was 30 years ago, this year, since, and actually a little longer, but since I tasted the depth of that silence and really went there, and that was with the help of many teachers, you know, many retreats that I've gone to, and I love to name the people because they've been so instrumental in that. Mary Hunt brought me to the silence. She really showed me in those days up at St. Anthony's in Three Rivers how to sit and how it would grow, and how I, as I embraced the silence, it would just get bigger and bigger until it took me over, until there was no more me. And last night the tape was on self-surrender. And we used terms like getting the self out of the way. Well, in a way that's a form of separation. Like, now I have a self and now I have God, and I got to get that self out of here, and I got to kill it, and I got to die it, and I got to get it to die, and I got to annihilate it. And that is not my experience of what works. It's very painful to do it that way. What for me has worked finally, when I finally gave up all the whips and chains and sackcloth and ashes and bloody knees, and when I finally just stopped and allowed God to be God, you know, allowed God to live its life as a Dulcie, as a Mary, as a whoever. And embrace the fact that my little one is going to do what she's going to do, and I get to love her and embrace her and forgive her and take her in until she lays down gently, quietly, and I get to pat her, and I get to embrace her, and I get to tell her it's okay, and I get to say, be still now, be still and know that I, the big I, am God. What a difference. And I've been reading lately, I don't know, it came to me to read Teresa of Avila. And in there I was expecting, because it was from the 1500s, I was expecting a lot of, whipping of self, and because that's what we did in those monasteries, those of us who have been to them throughout the centuries. We were going to beat humanness out of us, and whip us into being God. And that's not at all what she talks about in there. In fact, she's quite amusing, and she's basically inviting everyone to lay down the whips and to gently come to the center and to the being and to be quiet. And there's a few people that have never experienced a silent retreat, that maybe this is your first opportunity, and I pray that during this experience you will have that moment when the mind just seems to not be there anymore. We learn to first go back in and sit behind it, be amused by it until we're not amused anymore, and it just sort of dies down. The tape recorder just sort of runs out eventually. But then there's that moment of what Barbara would term the descending of the dove. Mary Hunt, I don't believe she ever named it, but we would have that time when suddenly, throughout our experience, we would all just be being held in almost like a bubble of pure quietness, silence. We couldn't come up with a story if we tried. We couldn't come up with words if we tried. And we would just bask in that presence. And the first book I ever read of Joel's was called Practicing the Presence. And that is what we are doing here. Those of us who are still coming to that silence, we're practicing that presence, practicing being consciously aware here in this moment by moment. The second book I read of Joel's was called The Art of Meditation. And I was trying to find a dictionary to actually look up the word art. And because we use it, you hear it a lot in many of the New Age books, the art of motorcycle mechanics or something, and the art of this and the art of that, the art of poo and the art of the Tao of poo, and everything is the art, the artist way, all bringing us home into the art form that so expresses the creative inner being, and that creativity coming up and out, whether it be through our hands or through our eyes or through our voice or through our bodies running or swimming or whatever it is. It's the art of presence, the art of being consciously aware of, here I am, this incarnation as a woman, as a Dulcie, and you insert whatever it is you are, and from there, manifesting as, creating as, allowing as, being, changing, growing. And the easiest way to change something in yourself that you don't like is by moving right into it, sitting down in it, accepting it as it is, and before you know it, it will be moving, gently growing, going. Sometimes we have to be very, very dominant in that experience, whether it be a habit or a addiction. Sometimes we must be very, very firm to stop it, and we need help from others to cease ye that which is keeping me separate from my God being. But eventually that control and that fear aspect turns into a loving, gentle discipline of one's being. And when we finally fall in love, we fall in love with life itself. We fall in love with ourself, and not in a narcissistic way, but in a gentle, but this is merely God life too, manifesting as being, allowing, living, breathing in the love and letting out the love. It's circular. Everything we do is circular. And we come to the term, which we've heard many times, take dominion. Just try that sometime when you have a cold or a cough. I've been getting to play with that a lot in the last 2 to 3 weeks. Take dominion. Well, if I'm trying to take dominion, that's the little self saying, yes, I can do this. Well, after coughing all night long, I started saying, okay, Father, what does take dominion mean? Or letting someone run over your life and take your life from you, and you find yourself laying down and giving everything to someone who's very willing to take all your time and all your energy. Take dominion. Well, what does that mean? Gently I was brought to take dominion means, where is dominion? A dominion, we think of our dominion as a house, or that where we reside. So taking dominion merely means me moving that little self out of that human experience into the dominion of its God self, of its divinity. Take dominion means move into the dominion. Ask to be raised, ask to be meditated, ask to be silenced. And it happens. I had an experience the last few months with a lump on my foot. Well, I know every healing word, every healing sentence you all know. I've read every book, listened to every tape. For 6, 7 years perhaps, this lump was not budging. I sought help, called different healers, called different people, and would look at it and say, well, isn't that the silliest thing? So I took a couple of steps a few years ago, and I went to a podiatrist, and yes, they had this wonderful way of putting me into the hospital and cutting it out and creating this big boot for me to walk around in for 2 or 3 weeks, and it didn't sound the least bit pleasant to me. So I decided it must just be a ganglion, and I'd hit it with a book, And I thought, well, maybe I better hit it with the Bible. That's not working. And then years would go by, and I would forget all about it until I'd be out at the beach, or someone would say, what's that on your foot? And I'd look down, and I'd go, oh, yeah, I forgot all about it. And I thought, well, this thing's going to go away, because I was living under the that which in the third dimensional world can appear can also disappear. If it can grow on the body, it can also ungrow. But this doggone thing was not ungrowing, and it wasn't disappearing. And years would go by, and one time I remember being at Lee's a couple of years ago and saying, well, look at that. Come on, let's get rid of this. And then I thought, well, it's not hurting, it's not bothering you. Why are you trying to get rid of it? I don't know, forget it. So I'd forget it. About 2 months ago, I looked down, and it's bigger than ever. And I think, my God, maybe I'm not surrendering to the medical profession. Must be I'm just, because at one time Barbara Muhl had her daughter, who I remember had a brain tumor. And Barbara got her healing ministry sitting in finally Joel says, you better go get that taken care of. So they made the appointment, and she went in for the brain surgery. It was actually Erica. And while Barbara was sitting in the hospital meditating during the surgery, which was successful, she had her awareness of being healed. Becoming the complete manifestation of getting her healing understanding. And in that hospital, several healings took place during that time that she was sitting there meditating and just knowing that there cannot be anything but God presence. So a couple of months ago, I looked down, and it's bigger, and I said, well, darn it, you've got insurance. Just go in and have the darn thing cut out. I'm so sick of looking at this and it growing, and it wasn't anything. I knew it wasn't anything. So I go and make the appointment, and he tells me yes, and this is like 5 years later, and I'm thinking, well, by now they must have much better laser things, and maybe they don't. He starts telling me he's going to put me in and get me this big blue boot, and I'm going to get cut, and I have to be put out, and I'm like, that doesn't sound like fun at all. But I said, okay, I make the appointment for the surgery. And I surrender, and I says, well, God damn it, you're not doing it. Excuse the expression. So I'm just done with this healing stuff. I'm getting the darn thing cut out. I go to bed, I wake up in the morning, and my foot is in such pain, all the way up my leg. And I look down, and the hard knot is no longer a hard knot, but like a spongy marshmallow. And it literally had burst in the night. And there was 3 or 4 days where I was in this fabulous pain because I knew it was dissipating whatever was in there, and it just kept going down and going down. And can I explain any of this to you? Absolutely not. I can only share an experience. I don't understand it. All I know is I got mad, and I guess I thought I was taking dominion, and I guess I found out where dominion really reigned, not within my, okay, I make that appointment. I don't know. But all I know is today it's gone. And I went back into the doctor, and I said, look at that, this thing burst. And he went in and he decided to drain, which I had done several times. They had drained it, and it'd come right back, And he took a little bit out, and that was that. And it's not there anymore. That's all I know. And so you play with take dominion. I don't know. All I know is I finally, I know that my dominion is not in the body. The body is in my consciousness. And for whatever reason, it chose to give me a break, I guess. Because I'm just not fond of getting any kind of drugs whatsoever. I don't want to be knocked out. It alters something, I guess. I don't know. Or else I'm stubborn. But whatever it is, I finally do surrender to, because even Joel says there's a lot of times we have to have materia medical healings, and I certainly honor the amazing things that the medical profession can do. And now I continue to honor that which can also take care of itself. And I don't know what getting mad about it did, but anyway. So we're all here in many states and stages of consciousness, having many experiences of using what is offered by the medical profession, and then those of us who are too stubborn sometimes, and whatever. It's like this is your life experience. This is you coming here to experience God in this form. And you are going to have many wonderful questions of why things work the way they do. And maybe you'll never know. So I have to finally just drop why and just go, isn't that interesting? Now this is happening. Now when I go into damp, cold areas, my joints ache, and when I go back to the desert, they don't. Well, isn't that interesting? And I continue to come and go, and I continue to try not to label anything good or evil, because that is in, as I know, the third dimensional scene. But by golly, I came here, didn't I? I'm here in the third dimension, and yet I'm also experiencing it from an illusionary fourth dimensional domain. Not to take ourselves too seriously, not to get emotionally involved in my own creations. On the table back there, I put the name and phone number of how to receive the Margaret Johnson's tape on Mind and the Intellect. If you would like to get that, it's one of the most wonderful tapes explaining the illusionary world and the mental projecting that we do. Or you can borrow it from Lee if you're down that way. Also, I put out there the newsletter of Virginia and the newsletter of the Infinite Way so that you could have the addresses, and also the newsletter of Tricia Hardy, who still is playing tapes and does the July 4th class of the Barbara Muhl work and Joel work at the Sportsman's Lodge. So we still have a lot of activity around us. The many teachers, Virginia Stevenson has just laid an amazing groundwork for the healing demonstrations and the biblical understanding of the work of John and the work of Jesus. And Mary Hunt, she taught us to be still and go into the silence. And Doris Crawford still has her Saturday morning silent meditations. And all of these are wonderful teachers that I've sat at their feet throughout the years to be taught and trained and shown. Will Hoff and Herb Fitch, my goodness, our cup runneth over of the talent. And we have Tony Titchell still giving classes around. So enjoy and bask in everything available. And in the South Bay now, there will be a new healing class starting the first Wednesday night at Lee's house. We're going to concentrate more on the healing aspect of Joel's work, which basically, as we filter it through the years, has come into an allowing, more of an allowing of a being, of a just letting it all be. Coming home, dropping the whys, and just watching, as Lee's tape says on his phone, everything is unfolding exactly as it should, or not. Should according to my conditioning, should according to my script manufacturing, and Joel's wisdoms, everything has to be handled within, and that's what we are here about this weekend. We are here to examine and to lay it down, that which has not been working for us, and move toward the solution, which is God. Surrendering to the God of our understanding and asking for more clarity, asking to be opened up and to expand our awareness of the depth of silence. So why are you here this weekend? It is not to sit within the mind and listen to all those recordings from the past of the universal parents saying the shoulds and should nots. And if you find uncomfortability in the silence, you're not in the silence, but allow yourself to understand and be gentle and say, oh, I have things that I need to get rid of. And one of the best ways while you're here, if there's a lot running around in the mind, please avail yourself of pen and paper. Get it out. Allow that part of you, the ignorant self that is so conditioned and so wants to do it the right way or the good way or the God way, let it write it out on the paper. It's amazing how it dissipates when it gets out into the third dimensional light of day. You can then see the lies, see the ignorance that has been laying there, and also see the innocence of that little human being so innocent in its walk toward God, where God is right there all the time. There's nowhere to go. That which I'm looking for, I'm looking with. And dropping down after I get all that stuff out on the paper. Write those letters to those people that you're telling off in your mind anyway, and just get rid of it. Let it go so that you can then come and bask and rest right here in that womb of the precious presence, the silent splendor, as Browning. Truth is within ourselves. It takes no rise. From outward things, whatever you may believe, there is an inmost center in us all, where truth abides in fullness and around. Wall upon wall, the gross flesh hems it in, this perfect, clear perception, which is truth. A baffling and perverting carnal mesh binds it and makes all error and to capital K-N-O-W, no. Rather consists in opening out a way whence the imprisoned splendor may escape, then in effecting entry for a light supposed to be without. So that is why we're here. We're opening out a way for that silent splendor. And as it goes out, know that the work that you do here within and letting it out, good, bad, or indifferent, is clearing it up for the entire world. This peace that goes beyond all words and thoughts, beyond all understanding, is released out into the community, into the world. And as we seek to raise ourselves higher and higher, wait, I've been corrected, we cannot raise ourselves higher and higher. That is a God experience. That is where we can but surrender to God lifting us. As we are lifted and hold our arms open for those around the world seeking refuge, seeking sanctuary, in our lifting, they can get caught on the coattails, touching the hem of the robe of the Master Jesus Christ, that then comes and lifts all of us into the Buddha mind awareness of being awake, present and accounted for. Right there, the kiss. The arms around you. If you have any concern for those back home, allow the arms to be around them also. Give them to their God. They will awaken in their own time. Right there, in that silence, expanding it until there is no time, no thought, and no space.